The Living Clean podcast is not affiliated with Narcotics Anonymous, nor do we speak on behalf of NA as a whole. We are simply members sharing our personal experiences and perspectives in recovery based discussions. The opinions expressed here are our own and not those of Narcotics Anonymous as a fellowship. This is the Living Clean podcast. This podcast is not meant to replace meetings, sponsorship, step work, or service. This podcast is meant to be another tool in your recovery toolbox. Our guests are here to share their experience, strength, and hope with recovery through Narcotics Anonymous. Thank you for joining us. All right, welcome back to the Living Clean podcast. We're back for another special episode, and we have been excited about this one. Huge shout out to Francis and our friend Chris B for giving us this fantastic idea. This is something that we've wanted to feature on the podcast for a long time. We'll get to what we're talking about here in just a second. But the first thing we're going to do is start with introductions. We will go to the co-host with the most, Francis.
Francis Addict, clean date, December 22nd, 1992. My home group is You Are the Book Study in Chico, California. We meet at 6:30 in the morning on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Come join us.
All right, Francis. Next, we'll go to Keddy.
My name's Keddy H. My clean date's 12599. My home group is the Hole in the Wall group in Narcotics Anonymous inside of Oregon State Penitentiary. And I also represent the Friday Night Variety in Staten at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. 7 p.m. on Friday nights. Be there, be square.
Welcome, Keddy. And then right beside you, we got Steve. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm Steve B. My clean date's December 2nd, 1997. My home group is the Hole in the Wall and the Outside GSR. And when I'm out here, I go to the same one as Keddy. I go to the Staten meeting. Friday Night Variety starts at 7, ends at 8:30 every Friday night.
Awesome. Welcome, Steve. Next, we got David.
Hey, Dave Peel. I'm clean date April 15th, 1998. Home group is the Hole in the Wall group, the Oregon State Penitentiary. But since my release, it's the Thursday night unloaded meeting in Coquille, Oregon. We start at 6:45, and please come and join us.
All right. Welcome, David. Next, we have, is it Eric? Is that correct?
Yes, Eric N. Clean date, December 3rd, 1998. My home group's NA Hole in the Wall group at Oregon State Penitentiary.
Awesome. Okay, and then now we have a group of people joining us for various reasons. Some are observing, some are going to help us with the questions, and all are welcome to jump in and participate. But we're going to start with Art.
Good evening. My name is Art M. My clean date is February 3rd, 2003. My home group is the Tuesday night men's meeting on Tuesday night in Eugene, Oregon, the greatest meeting in the world.
Welcome back, Art. Next, we got Chris B.
Hey, I'm Chris, coming up on 35 years of recovery on May 21st. And just happy to be here as somebody who's a student of the history of recovery.
Awesome. Welcome, Chris. Lucas.
Hey, peace. I'm an addict called Lucas. Real 29 March 1999. Appreciate listening to what y'all brothers doing.
Welcome, Lucas. Let's see. We got Lisa. Maybe not. Maybe Lisa's just listening. Mike H, are you participating?
Mike H, December 27th, 2018, home group, loading in Narcotics Anonymous, Coquille, Oregon.
All right. Welcome, Mike. Okay. Now that we've got everybody properly introduced, Francis, so I think it's time to introduce the topic tonight. So, as you noticed, several of these gentlemen had something in common when they shared their home group. They mentioned this hole in the wall group uh, at the Oregon State Penitentiary. So, I guess before we get started with the history or any of that, let's just explain to the NA members that are listening what is this group and what makes it so special.
Well, I have some participation in preserving the message group, and Chris had mentioned we've done a podcast that was tied to one of their blog posts, which was the Mid-South Regional Service Conference, and then Chris B suggested that we do a piece on the hole in the wall group inside Oregon State Penitentiary. And I've been aware of them for some time, but this was an opportunity to kind of look a little bit deeper. I took a look at the blog post that was done 10 years ago on the Chestnut website. It was really interesting. They had gotten a bunch of letters from the inside and presented some history. Recently, there was an Instagram post by the World Service Office about the Hole in the Wall group. And so it's my understanding that the Hole in the Wall group is the longest running registered Narcotics Anonymous group that meets on the inside. So it's an institutional meeting that doesn't necessarily get support from H&I. They run independently on their own by member contribution, and but also like they have support from the outside. They have members that were formerly on the inside. Now they're on the outside, and that's who we have here tonight. Is like people that were inmates that participated in the Hole in the Wall group, and now they're living and enjoying life without the use of drugs on the outside. And we also have the outside coordinator that helps maintain. I know he sells merchandise, and he organizes volunteers, and he's been the person that I've been talking to put together the podcast, and that would be Ketty, and maybe he could provide a little bit of background, and then we'll throw it around to the other fellows.
Thank you, Francis. Ketty H, recovering addict, grateful recovering addict, and I say that for my own good because my life has never been better. About 15 years ago, Stevie B suggested that I come into the prison, and of course I wasn't on board with that, but I did, and I stayed very adamant about it, and finally I got cleared to get in there, and then I became the outside contact to get people cleared to come into the prison. We have meetings in there, excuse me, Tuesday at noon, Friday morning at 7, and second and fourth Saturday of every month. And then we have once a month, we have a
Friday
night meeting.
The home group.
Yeah, the home group meeting. And then we also, the guys inside draw up artwork. It's all hand-drawn artwork, and then we print them up on T-shirts and hoodies, and we literally sell them all around the world. I'm a licensed Narcotics Anonymous vendor, and so I travel 11 Western states doing convention sales, and I sell the merchandise, and 100% of the money that we make selling the merchandise goes back to the guys inside to provide them with coffee, literature, cinnamon rolls, coffee, NA World, when we order cases of books from them, Johnny over there always kicks us down a whole bunch of extra stuff, little dinged and donged and bent and scratched stuff that they can't sell anymore. They'll throw in the box and send in to us. They love us over there at World Services because we are the oldest running Narcotics Anonymous meeting on the books.
When the group started when?
1988. 1980.
Steve, you want to jump in for a second and kind of give us a maybe some background, like when did you first hear about this meeting and how did you get involved?
Okay, well, I heard about the meeting when I came out of the hole, and I was on LOP, so I could only go to the chow hall. I could go to AA, I could go to church, I could go to AA or NA. They told me they were giving cinnamon rolls away at the NA meeting, so that's where I went. And I've been there ever since. I've never had to relapse from the day I've gotten clean. That's why I've got 27 years clean, because I just keep on ticking. I've been into the service. I got back into the prison. I got released in April of 2000, and they let me back in as a volunteer helper in 2005. So I've been going in there steadily for 20 years as the outside GSR. I go to area, I go along with Ketty to sell t-shirts and do that stuff and raise money and talk to people and let people know what we're doing and try to help any other prison start the same kind of meetings, that all it takes usually is just a notch and they can get it going. Inmates don't have to wait for H&I. I mean, H&I is a great starting thing, but you got to learn to take care of yourself and go, and that's what the Hole in the Wall's done. Thanks to people like Eric and Dave that was inside for many more years than us.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Well, let's jump over to Dave and then Eric. Dave, maybe you can answer the same question. Like when did you become aware that there was this meeting and how did you get involved?
Well, I got to OSP in February of 92, and I'd heard about it pretty much right off the bat. But like most people that go in, that are drug addicts, well, they kind of linger on. And even though I was involved with the activity section for a good many years before that, I didn't get involved with the Hole in the Wall group until I went and seen the parole board in 2011. And I went and talked to Eric. I says, hey, I need to go and sign up for NA. He goes, well, it's about time. He had been on me for a while. And even though I'd had at that time just almost 14 years of sobriety, I hadn't really worked on myself. And when I went to see the parole board, I had said, hey, I'll go to NA meetings when I get out. And they said, why aren't you going to them now? And I told them I didn't have a problem with drugs inside. So when I first got involved with the Hole in the Wall group, I had some reluctance. I didn't really want to be there. Thought I was being forced into it. But once I started hearing the message of recovery and things started hitting home, and that's where it happens for a lot of guys. If they just open up the ears and pay attention to what's going on, things really start changing in their lives. And I had to do a lot of work on myself in the process to finally get the chance to be paroled in April 27th, 2023. I've been out just over 2 years now. I just celebrated 27 years of sobriety. It's one of those things that it's a kind of a mixed feeling. Like a lot of addicts, they tell the little white lies to their families to kind of get by and say, oh, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. We all did it. when I finally decided to stop, I was done. And I've told a lot of people it took me about 3 years to lose the desire to stop using, but I did it on my own. Some people call it white knuckling it or what have you, but it got a whole lot easier once I joined the hole in the wall group. And the last 5 years of my time, I served as the inside GSR. I also served as a chairperson. I chaired our Wednesday night meeting, Saturday morning meeting, our group meeting for our home group on Friday nights. I did that for quite a while. During COVID, we were really the only in-person meeting going on in the United States. They only allowed us 15 people at a time. And we shared that with the AA group there at the prison. And with everything else going on, there was really only two of us that were running the group. Ed G, who was released from prison here about a year and a half ago, and myself. Like everything else in prison, people get short, people parole, people get shipped out to minimum custody, and we got faced that we're the only twos running the group. And with the help of Steve and Ketty, we did the best that we could with what we had. So, and if it wasn't for the hole in the wall group, I'd probably still be sitting at the Oregon State Penitentiary.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave. All right, Eric, I want you to jump in for a second because you had a particularly special role, right? Like where you were the club president, is that correct?
Yeah, I was the club president and then the GSR for, I don't know, probably 15 years and club president. So, I heard about, I was a frequent flyer in the beginning, in and out, in and out. And I remember hearing about NA Hole in the Wall Group, when it first opened, that you could go up there and get cinnamon rolls, but I wasn't open to that at that point in my life. I told people, why would I do that when I was going to get loaded when I got out? So I actively become actively engaged in 1997 when I got sent to prison for a very long prison sentence. And I went to the meetings, I got clean, I got the books, I worked the steps, and I did a lot of service work. And I watched the NA Hole in the Wall group grow from a very small meeting to a very large meeting, where we would have 150 people, I think, Ketty and Steve, on Saturdays, trying to get up to the floor and people begging to get into the meetings, but due to capacity, we'd have to turn people away. So what I witnessed from the NA Hole in the Wall group is that it has changed thousands of people's lives because of working steps, service work in the people that come in and bring the meetings, as well as the population that actively engages in our meetings. So thanks to Narcotics Anonymous, especially the NA Hole in the Wall group, but because of Narcotics Anonymous, it has changed not my life, but everybody's life that's on the meeting tonight, and thousands of others that aren't here to let us know.
All right. So one thing I'm interested about, Eric, is can you describe what the role of the club president is? Because that's not something that we're particularly familiar with. Could you give us a description of what your role and your duty was as the club?
Well, actually, we called it a club president because that's what activities would call it. Actually, it was the group secretary. That's to advocate for the group to the administration. Make sure meetings got on the calendars, make sure our guests were allowed to get in, ordering of materials from World Service Office, advocating for men that weren't allowed to come to meetings because of their level coming out of segregation could come up and experience the change that Narcotics Anonymous did in their lives. Yeah, paperwork,
I got you. You were the advocate for, to the officials, right?
Yeah, one of many.
Awesome.
Is the club more than just Narcotics Anonymous? I mean, I understand, there's like a car show that people participate in. Is there more to it, the club, than just the NA meetings?
Well, the NA meetings do participate in the car show and fundraising events to help raise money for literature, as Ketty and Steve do. It's a way of life for people inside the prison. So, does that answer your question?
Kind of. I was just curious if it was if there was a larger role, like the club has a larger role than just Narcotics Anonymous. It sounds like it might be part of the structure inside the jail. I don't know.
Well, I wouldn't say it was a structure by the administration, but it's a structure by the recovery community inside, as well as the administration. The administration allowed us to have the meetings, so I am thankful and grateful for that. They supported us. But the recovery community was strong, and it would carry that message outside the rooms that anyone, if they had the will, could get clean and with a new way of life, even while incarcerated.
Wow. Yeah, so I guess this question kind of goes out to any one of you that want to answer this. I just want to paint the complete picture for those that are listening, from like the day that you're in prison, and then you decide that, or you hear about this group and then you want to get involved. What is the process for an inmate inside? Because I can't imagine that they just get to say, "Oh, I'm going to come tonight." There has to be some sort of process, I would imagine, for an inmate to get involved in that group. Can one of y'all walk me through that?
I can.
Oh, you got it, Eric?
Yeah, so they would have to send a kite to the activities floor to ask permission to get on the turnout. That's how they let people out of their cells, is by a turnout. And there's a certain amount of people that can be on a turnout to meet the capacity of whatever floor. At least that's how it was when I was there. And then they would check to make sure that the prisoner was eligible to be able to go to the floor. And once that was all completed, then they'd be able to come to meetings. When I left in 2018, there was probably a wait list of 1 year long. Is that still correct? Is there a wait list to get into meetings?
I'm trying to, there we go, unmute. Yeah, there is a wait list to get into every single one of the meetings, the Friday, Tuesday, and Saturday morning meeting. There's constantly a wait list. And so the guys have to sign in when they're up there.
You miss 2 meetings in a row, we take you off the list. That lets the newcomer come in at better rate.
Yeah.
Just because you're an old timer in the prison, you miss 2 meetings in a row, we take you off the list and let the new guy step in. And as long as that stays up, we can keep rotating people. But we still maintain 150 to 175 people on a Saturday morning meeting. And I think that's a pretty good deal inside a penitentiary.
Oh, that's incredible. Go ahead, Francis.
Wouldn't it be great if people treated it that serious on the outside? Yeah, I think it's similar to San Quentin and Susanville Prison here in California, where they have a waiting list. If you drop off, like your attendance, you have to go back to the bottom of the waiting list, and people showed up sick, and like they were. It was serious business for them. Yeah.
Well, am I still on here?
Yeah, you're on.
Well, when I got to the group, I knew that if I wanted to have a life at this point, I mean, that was 1996. And I knew if I wanted to have a life when I left prison, because I was going to be released in 2000, that I needed to make a change in my life. And I knew that Narcotics Anonymous was my last stop on the block. And I was serious about working the steps and being people's sponsor. I still sponsor people in prison. I get them working the step. I tell them that, you joined a 12-step program, work the steps. This is what we're about. You got to find out who you are, what your triggers are, what we can do to make it so you don't have to use anymore, and then start yourself a life that you can enjoy for the rest of it.
What did that look like? What did sponsorship look like on the inside? Did you utilize, like sponsorship by mail? That there's a lot of H&I people that, areas that do sponsorship behind the walls, or do you sponsor each other from the inside?
The inmates sponsor each other, but I'm lucky enough to go in every other Saturday. So I sponsor people in person in there. They got chairs for me in the hallway that when the meeting starts, after the readings, I take my sponsees when they have their step done, and we go back and do it face to face.
Wow.
I've been sponsoring people for years in there, and it works out pretty damn good, You can tell who's serious and who's going to stay clean and who wants to be there, I remember Dave Peel when he first got there, he didn't want to be there. And we used to tell him, dude, you need it. And and he finally came around to believe that he needed it, I'm Eric Nitsky's sponsor. And when he was sponsored him, he was in the prison too. So, I mean, what goes around just keeps coming. I mean, what was freely given to me, I give away.
Like Steve said, we would sponsor people, do the step work during the meetings, or since some of us were up there that were incarcerated on the activities floor, when we were up there, we could get them during the week. They could come up and work the steps, And I was able to work my steps with Steve, who is my sponsor still today, on the activities floor. So, like everybody on this call, we know the answer to the problem is step work, right?
What's up, Art?
Sorry about that. So, Steve, I just wanted to ask, you said that when you go in, you are working the steps with folks, but that's during the meeting?
That's the only time I'm allowed in there. I get to go in 10 minutes before the meeting or a half hour before the meeting, and I have to leave right at the end of the meeting.
Aha. Okay.
I don't get to hang out there all day. It's not.
I understand.
This is a topic.
I understand. So so then they actually miss that meeting that day, but they're working the steps with you.
We do the steps right in the meeting. We have a corner over in the corner. We do our steps quietly. The meeting is, they don't let us leave that room.
They miss about 20 minutes of the meeting. They don't miss the whole meeting. They just, because they never go over a whole set of steps. All of step one. The guys break it down into pieces in there and stuff, and they'll have a couple pages written that they want to go over, and then we keep them going that way. So that way they don't miss the whole meeting. They only miss probably 10 or 15 minutes of it while they review some of it.
A couple of years back, on Wednesday night, I used to come in and we used to do a step study. On the first Wednesday, on the second Wednesday of the month, we would do the steps. And on the fourth Wednesday of the month, we'd do the traditions. And there was like 12 to 20 people in a group, and we just did a step study meeting that way.
Awesome.
Yep, January would be step one, February would be step two, and each month.
We had 2 a month. So the first of the month would be the steps, and the second meeting of that month would be the traditions.
Right.
And we went right on through.
We do a step each month.
Yeah.
Wow.
Step in a tradition every month.
Come on in, Chris.
Thanks, guys. So Boyd and I came December 4th, 2014, and were able to do a history presentation at one of the group anniversaries. A couple things that made big impressions upon me that I'm curious about. One, Steve, you and another gentleman who'd been a lifer picked us up from the airport, and you described that there was this text thread of lifers once they got out from the Hole in the Wall group that provided support to one another. And along those lines, there was a guy that had come into that meeting who'd been a lifer, and I think it may have been his first time in, and since he'd gotten out 5 years before. So I recall him describing that when he was getting ready to be released, that his family said, we'll pick you up at the gate. And he said, no, don't pick me up at the gate. The Hole in the Wall guys that have gotten out are picking me up at the gate. Those two things made a pretty strong impression upon me about the fellowship part of people who got into recovery, inside the walls, making that transition into the community. And I'm curious, if that sort of stuff still happens, or what you would just say about how those who've gotten out welcome those back home.
Well, me and Ketty, we don't stop when they get out of prison. We keep in contact with everybody that we can. They all have our phone numbers. If they all need help, they call us, I was there when Eric got released, when Dave got released.
We just picked a guy up and took him
to
down to Bedford last week.
And we do what we can for people. And as well as I do, that Narcotics Anonymous is a two-way street. If they don't call me, I can't help them, I keep their numbers. I keep in contact with everybody I can, and I do what I can for them. But I would say Dave or Eric would be a better person to answer that.
Yeah. So when I got out, Steve and Ketty were there with my family and friends, and being a service of the group today, I sell the merchandise, the Hole in the Wall merchandise to people down here on the Southern Oregon coast. I've got people that are contacting me and saying, hey, where can I get this Hole in the Wall stuff? And I've gone to other functions and says, hey, aren't you the guy? I said, yeah, I'm the guy. And I've got boxes of merchandise that I've been selling for the guys. It's my way of still giving back to them. And having Steve and Ketty there when I walked out, I know that support's there. We all have it. We're a phone call away. And, I've got people here in Coquille that I turn to when I need it. I've got people that turn to me when they need it. It's a family, it's a fellowship, and it's a lifelong endurance. And it's what we're here for.
Awesome, Dave. Eric, you got anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, Steve and Jimmy came and got me, and I went to a program when I got out after 22 years, and have supported me as well as Ketty. We still meet, we go to eat, we go to meetings. When I got out, I was greeted by people that were incarcerated that come to the NA Hole in the Wall group that were my sponsees. I would share at meetings, and people would come up and say, hey, do you remember me? You used to hand out donuts at the NA Hole in the Wall group. So it's not me, it's the Narcotics Anonymous Hole in the Wall group and our higher power that planted seeds of recovery to so many men and probably women that have come into the group and supported the men inside, that there is a fellowship, that people support each other out here when they are free. So Steve and Ketty are warriors.
I'm also interested on a couple other things. One is, without there being meetings 7 days a week in there, And I'm reflecting on some of the things that were shared with us when we were there 11 years or almost 11 years ago. How do hole in the wall group members on the inside support one another in between meetings at the Oregon State Penitentiary?
So we have meetings Tuesday afternoon. We have meetings Friday morning at 7 o'clock, and then we have the meetings the second and fourth Saturday. So we have 3 meetings a week in there. The guys, they meet on a yard. They work together. There is more meetings in Oregon State Penitentiary in 1 week than there is in almost any prison in all of Oregon. Like I go into 3 different prisons. I go into Santiam and I go into OSCI up in Portland. They have 1 meeting a week. That's it. Outside members, somebody from the outside has to come in or they don't get to have their meeting. Hole in the wall group, if none of us outside people are able to come in, their meetings still exist 3 times a week. So they're very liberal there, man. They're as much as I hate to say that they would like people to keep coming back to prison, they support the NA community pretty hard in there, but we push it pretty hard. You know what I mean? We're up them about it. You know what I mean? We're up them about making sure we're getting people cleared. We're up them about making sure the 451s to bring the people in. We're on it about trying to get people badged to come in there. I mean, it took me 13 years to get badged in there. They kept making me be escorted, because, I don't know why, but they wanted me to fail. But Stevie B kept telling me, don't give in, man. Don't let the man get you down. And so I kept pushing forward and they finally badged me. And then what was funny was they badged me and then they pulled Steve's badge and he's all fuck them motherfuckers, man. I ain't fucking going there. I'm done. 20 years, I'm done. And I'm like, step up, Steve. Keep being a warrior, man. And then next thing we know, they fucking gave him his badge back about 2 months later. But it was fucking funny. But anyways, we're pretty good in there with a lot of people, man.
Come on in, Dave.
Yeah, you were talking about what we do between the meetings. We go out to the yard and make ourselves available. And the people that are going to the meetings or know that we're involved with the group, they'll walk up to us on the yard and say, hey, I need to talk to someone. Eric and I lived in A block, and people would come up to our cells and say, hey, you got a minute? And, all it takes is 2 people to have a meeting. It's what we did during COVID. There was people that were having 4 or 5 guys out on the bleachers out by the softball fields having meetings. You don't have to have a sanction to have a meeting. And where we worked, Eric and I would talk about stuff when we were at work, when we were working in the furniture factory. I would ask him a question, and it's what we do. We represent Narcotics Anonymous, and no matter what, it's what we do. We represent.
So I just want to stay on this for a second or come right to you, Art. So it's known that in prison there's a bunch of things that separate people, right? Like different groups, different gangs, different things like that. Does NA seem to transcend those barriers?
So that was a big issue when our meetings were full. That the institution was worried because we'd have so and so from this tip. No, NA was neutral territory, and everybody respected everybody while they're in the meetings because they're there for recovery. And NA doesn't turn anyone away. So that was a strong message that the club sent and I sent and the executive body sent, that everybody's welcome. We don't bar anybody. And it was neutral territory or neutral ground on the activities floor.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever had anything break out, at least in the 15 years I've been going in there. Steve, anything?
No, I mean, no, not really. I mean, I got in a argument with a colored dude one time. He was saying that black men have a hard time sharing it in the hole in the wall group, and he wanted them to start their own meeting. And I said, listen, dude, we don't care if you're purple. You are welcome in this meeting. We don't need to start another hole in the wall group so you guys can have your own group. I mean, we have another group in there. It's with the Spanish people, but they have their own meeting because we can't understand them.
They can't understand us.
And so they have their own little room over in the corner, and they have a Spanish meeting going at exactly the same time.
Wow, that's interesting. Art?
Yeah, I actually have some organizational questions. You mentioned inside GSR, Group Service Representative. What is an inside GSR? And I think, Steve, you said you were the outside GSR. What is the difference, and what are those positions like, and what do you do? And I wanted to ask, how do you folks participate in the service structure of Narcotics Anonymous? And are you getting all your literature from NAS, or are you also getting literature locally with the outside GSR? If you could just explain a few of those things.
Want to take the literature first?
So we get all of our literature from NAS.
Okay.
We usually, the money I raise selling T-shirts and hoodies and hats is used for purchasing from NAS. And so I got a pretty tight thing with NAS, like I said earlier, that like any organization, they get stuff where book covers are bent or scratched or torn, or books they can't sell to people paying full price. NAS will take care of us, and they can take all that dent and scratch stuff, and they'll send it into the hole in the wall group. Sometimes they'll match us case for case, for having a good month and stuff. If we buy a couple cases of books, they'll throw in a free case of books of undamaged stuff. I mean, so all of our stuff is purchased from NAS. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, we get all the stuff.
And the difference between I'm the outside GSR, so I go to area for the group. And if there's a message from the inside GSR during the meetings, the only time the two GSRs get to meet. And for years it was Eric and me. I mean, we were sponsee. It was pretty easy, but sometimes our voted in GSR only stays for a month or two, and then they ship them to another unit, and they got to come into the inside GSR, and then they got to learn the whole system again, how we can work together, what they got to say. And they have their home group meeting on a Friday night in the prison, and he writes down the stuff that he wants me to tell the outside people at area. So we just basically pass notes. That's the difference between inside GSR and outside GSR. But Eric, he might be able to help in that. I mean, I don't know for sure what he did inside.
Yeah, and that was just like Steve said, Steve take everything out to the outside meeting for us since we weren't able to go with any questions we posed or concerns. And then Steve would take it to area and then come back and pass the message to us, because we were unable, of course, to leave the institution. So that's how it worked. And as far as the literature, NAS has always been very generous and helpful to the NA Hole in the Wall group. Before Ketty, and there was a lot of money being generated on the outside, we would do fundraisers, and NAS was very generous when we do a book order. Sometimes activities, if they had funds, would kick in extra cash for our book order or our coin order, and then Johnny down there at NAS would kick in, just like Ketty says. The fortunate thing is everybody loves the NA Hole in the Wall group and what we do, so there's a lot of support for us.
I really like how you guys practice autonomy as a group, and you have a lot of freedom in that. And I know that most of the people, I might be wrong. Maybe there's a ton of institutional groups out there that are as high functioning as the Hole in the Wall, but I think that most of the people that are getting the message on the inside of institutions is through hospitals and institutions. And I don't know if you're supported by hospitals and institutions, but it sounds like the support you have is because you're an autonomous group. The people that are involved with it are the people on the inside and the people that have gotten out of it and continue to support it. And it's like just a beautiful expression of what Narcotics Anonymous can do, and for you to keep a certain amount of autonomy from like the service structure of H&I. Like when I had to go into facilities, I'm instructed not to exchange phone numbers. Like, and that we're not supposed to sponsor each other, and that's not what you guys are doing. You've created your own system that's super supportive. I don't know if there's a question in that, but it's certainly like I give you props, and I see the difference, and I think it's beautiful. So great job.
Dave, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about the groups and how everybody has their situation. When we set up the group for the Spanish speaking guys, a couple guys came up to me and says, Dave, we need to set up our own NA group. And I said, yeah, you're right. At the time, we had about 8 Spanish speaking members. And I said, you're right. So I went to our then secretary, Ed G, and I said, we need to do this. He goes, yes, we do. And one of the things that you guys don't know about is when we go to start something that isn't already set up, we have to write proposals. We have to write this big long deal, why we have to do it, then submit it to our staff advisor, then they submit it to the activities meeting, and then that gets handed up through the administration. Well, this time we circumvented it altogether. We just did it. We didn't write a proposal. We didn't do anything. We just added the group. They are a part of the NA group. When there was times when we had to send messages, I would go in with the message, and when they got done with all their readings, one of the guys would interpret what I was relaying to the group. So we looked out for everybody that we could. And we started that group in 2021, 22. And by the time I left in April of 23, there was about 20 or 25 guys that were in the small room for that meeting. Everybody's welcome, but we made that setup for them so we did not alienate anybody. We kept them informed on everything. They had about 3 people that were representing that group that would come to us and say, hey, this is what's going on. This is what we need. We went to NAS. They sent us a bunch of material, and they hooked us up because it was the right thing to do.
Awesome. That is so good to hear. That is such a great story too. And
yeah,
it's fresh because we just covered an episode talking about the Spanish speaking area and in California, and we broke down the need for that, how it got started, the ins and outs and all that. And it's pretty cool that a lot of the same issues that they were having, you guys were having, and you took some of the same initiative to kind of get that started. So that's really cool to hear. What's up, Katie?
Stevie B got a word.
Okay.
I wanted to know, H&I is where, when I got out of the penitentiary in April 2000, within 2 weeks, I went to H&I, and they gave me a start at the Bridgeway, would let me in to carry the message. That was how I started. I still do the Marion County Jail and the psych ward here in Marion County. So I am a part of H&I, and I believe in H&I. I'm just glad that we started our own meeting. You know, it's if the prison was going to give us the permission and the freedom to do our own thing, that was what we wanted.
Well, and that's like, we don't have enough people up here in Oregon and not in our area to cover all the H&I. Like I said, I go into 3 different prisons, and they're non-H&I meetings. We've started regular meetings. Sandy Am is called Crossroads to Recovery, and the one at CRCI, I don't remember the name of it, but they're regular registered meetings with NAS as well. Just recently registered. The Crossroads to Recovery is about 2 years old. Every Tuesday night, I go into the prison, and then we got Sean B and my sponsor Dave to cover 2 Tuesdays out of the month, and I cover the first, second, and fifth. If there's a fifth Tuesday, I cover those meetings. And those are regular meetings of Narcotics Anonymous that are registered with NAS as well, because we just don't have enough people to cover H&I. You know what I mean? And H&I, you know, like my buddy Bill down there in California, when H&I gives him, they're like, "How many books do you need for the prison or for the jail, Bill?" And he's like, "I don't know, 15 or 20." And they go, "Here's one." You know, like you got 30 guys that are gonna fight over one book of Narcotics Anonymous. You know what I mean? And so that's why we do what we do, man. Like I got right now, these are the Spanish speaking NA key tags. I got a whole shirt tail load of them here. For the hole in the wall Hispanic side, I got to pull all the key rings off them, but you know, that's what we do out here, man. You know, H&I is a great start, but as sad as it might be, there's not enough members of Narcotics Anonymous that are willing to get up, step up, suit up, and show up. You know what I mean? And that's the hard part. You know what I mean? Like, I know going into OSP was really freaky for me, because like I did a lot of mean shit across the United States in a lot of little towns. And I was afraid that maybe some little town was going to come online one day while I was in OSP, and I was going to wave my badge to leave, and they were going to go, "Nope, motherfucker, like something just came up. We're going to keep your ass and shit," you know? And so that's what kept me out for a couple of years. Steve was up my ass about coming in. I was like, "No, man, you know, there's still a few things out there that might pop up on me." I don't remember. I was pretty high out there for quite a long time, you know what I mean, doing a lot of messed up stuff. But I'm to the point now where they run my name enough and run my background enough that I'm pretty sure that I'm good, you know, at least today anyways, you know what I mean? And so, like I said, H&I is cool, you know, and if you can get involved in H&I, do it, you know, but there's more to carrying a message inside the institutions than H&I.
All right, Chris.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the newsletter. I am fortunate to receive copies of the newsletter. Just super impressed that the group publishes a newsletter and that it's also available to those outside the walls. Would love to hear more from anybody about their experience with the newsletter, how many people it goes to, how it's used, and what the
Yeah, sure. I can jump in real quick. Well, the newsletter goes to a lot of people, and it was excellent for carrying messages to the segregation units, IMU units, other institutions where people were part of the club and left, and now at different institutions as well as the outside community. So I think it was very beneficial. And there's Ketty holding up one now, I think.
Yep, that's the address you write and you request, and they will mail out, man. Every quarter they will send you one. It's just hole in the wall group 2605 State Street, Salem, Oregon, 97301. And just write a letter, and the board of people like Eric that were in there, they'll get it and they'll see it and they'll add you to the mail out, and every quarter they'll mail you one. Until you ask them not to mail it. I mean, they'll mail it to you every month, no matter what, unless you ask them not
Every 4
to.
months.
Yeah.
Every 4 months, I'm sorry.
And so for those of you that are listening right now, go to the description in this podcast, and down in the description, we're going to leave the information in the description on how to receive that newsletter. We also will get to it too. I want to also plug some of the merchandise that's handmade, if it's still handmade. I know at one point that some of the guys on the inside were making some medallions and different things. Is that still going on?
So this is the NA book cover, and as this one's sewn, but they hand stitch them. They'll put your name and clean date on it. They'll basically can almost put anything you want on it. They're all hand tooled. They take about 2 weeks to get mailed out. We got pretty streamlined production in there right now. These guys are hammering them out. The artwork is beautiful.
They make wallets.
They make wallets. This is a single book cover. They make double book covers.
They make belts.
They make belts. But mostly we're doing book covers and handbags for women and stuff like that. But the big seller are the book covers. The double binding book covers are $225, made from real leather, hand tooled, got your name and clean date on them. You couldn't touch something like that on the outside for less than $500-700. You know what I mean? I mean, the artwork is incredible on it, and it's all made with love, and it's made by somebody that's clean. You know what I mean? And there's not a big margin on it for what they're making. You know what I mean? But they got time, and the guy that's doing them right now has been in about 40 years, and he just got flopped by the board another 5 years, and he's probably never getting out. But he's banging artwork out and doing a great job of it.
What about those coins, Ketty?
So we have hole in the wall coins. We have custom made medallions. We make hats. We make water bottles with the logo on it. We make shirts. We make hoodies. The guys draw the artwork. That's what I was holding up a little earlier. This is one of the skulls. This is one of the newest ones. This guy drew this picture. This is the original right here. He drew this picture in an hour, and it's hand drawn by pencil. Wow. This one here is another one. It's got the Celtic braid on it and stuff. This is NA in ruins. The letters are, but we told the guy we had to change those because not everybody knows how to read ruins. So we pulled the ruins out. We put NA on there. You know what I mean?
One thing I want to ask you guys because not everybody's story involves going to jail or to prison. So I'd like to paint them a picture. I went in and did H&I for a while at the Turney Center where I'm from in Tennessee. And one of the first, and I'm talking about like I probably wasn't a couple of years clean. This was my first time going into a prison doing H&I. And there was a guy in there who was he was doing life. And when I first walked in, my thoughts were, well, if I was doing life, would I even come to this meeting? And so I asked him about that, and he broke it down for me. He said, look, bro, I can't function in here because I'm always looking over my shoulder. My family won't answer the phone because every time I call them, they think I'm going to be asking for money. So they refuse to answer the phone anymore. He said, I can't get a good job here. He said, this is the only life I'm ever going to have. And I'm totally destroying all these opportunities that I could have to do my time in a better fashion, so to speak. So I just want to ask you guys, like, paint a picture for the people listening, like what is the difference between the lifestyle of somebody who's in active addiction inside of prison and then who has decided and versus the person who's decided to change and apply a program of recovery to their life? Eric?
Well, when I was incarcerated many times, and when in the beginning, and when I would go, I would continue the lifestyle that led me there until I got out, and then I'd get seeds planted in my head through numerous meetings in different places, but it never stuck. I never admitted that. I was an addict or I was powerless over my addiction. And, once I made that decision to get clean inside, I knew that I would never be able to, one, get released or see my family or have a relationship with the people that I loved if I didn't figure it out. And, once I started working the steps, and with Steve, my sponsor, my life got better. I got a job. I got made good choices. The people that were around me that were still living the old lifestyle decided to change as well, and a movement started. People's lives started changing for the better. And when I got released, I was sentenced to 35 years in prison. I did 22. And I went to the parole board 3 times. They called me Mr. NA because I would talk to them about the steps when I was there and how it changed my life. But, they'd heard that story before. Every time I would get locked up, I'd tell them whatever they wanted to hear so I could become free. But they knew that it was sincere this time. And when I got released, I'd started to build a relationship with my kids, but I was able to rebuild a relationship with my ex-wife and get remarried, right? A relationship that I never thought was possible because of Narcotics Anonymous. I have a good job in the community up here in Portland, working for a nonprofit, helping people just like us become sustainable, get jobs. The difference for people that are utilizing Narcotics Anonymous and staying clean in prison is a life, a real life, a sense of freedom that you cannot express even though you're incarcerated. Because I didn't have a parole date for a lot of years. And I had a positive attitude, not because of me, but because of what Narcotics Anonymous and my higher power did for me in my life. So, it's day and night between getting loaded and staying clean while incarcerated.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. Dave, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was sentenced to 35 to life. I am a lifer. Always will be a lifer. When I decided to join Narcotics Anonymous, like I said, I didn't really want to be there. I didn't think I needed it. But I would talk to a lot of other lifers that were looking at going to see the parole board and saying, hey, you need to make a change in your life. Whether you're getting out or not, it's about that change to make your life better. Whether it was you're still going to be incarcerated or not, even if you were released, you could still be incarcerated in your own life if you haven't worked on yourself. I told a lot of people, in the meetings, I says, there's going to be a day when you're going to wake up, pull your head out of your ass, wipe the shit off your face, simply because that's what you need to do. You live your life trying to chase a bag, whether it's on the streets or in the cell block. It's not a life to live. And when I finally decided to stop, I had used methamphetamines not a half hour, 45 minutes before, and I finally said, I'm done. And it's it changed my life. When I started listening to the messages in the meetings, things started making sense for me. And I regretted that I didn't do it sooner. And probably I would have had even more clean time. But, I have what I have. I'm proud of what I've accomplished. People in the community that I live here in Coos County and Coquille, Oregon, they're amazing. I called Mike H. the first day I was out. I said, "Hey, I need to get to a meeting." He took me to a meeting over in Coos Bay. I made it over to the meeting here in Coquille. It's a recovery revolution going on everywhere. There's people that are working it, there's people that are living it, and there's people that are breathing it, and they're spreading the message to everybody. And the guys that are doing H&I, that are going into the penitentiaries across the United States and the world, they're letting people know there's a better life to live, whether you have a parole date or not. When I got to Narcotics Anonymous, I didn't have a parole date. I never knew if I was getting out. And when I finally did, Ketty spoke on my behalf at my parole hearing. One of the parole members said, "Well, you have a lot of stuff that's up against you when you get out." And when Ketty spoke on my behalf, he says, "We need people like Dave because he's lived the life. He knows what it takes to recover." And recovery isn't about butterflies and balloons. You're going to have your ups and downs, and there's going to be times that you're going to go sideways, but it's whether or not you're going to go backwards, and that's your choice. And it's all up to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave. Katie, you got your hand up?
Yeah, and so we got the guy that's got the most time in there, John. He's got about 44 years clean. He's never getting out. The parole board told him, "Quit coming to the parole board. We're done with you. You're never getting out. Your crime was so horrible." You know what I mean? And the reality is like I have the only time I've ever asked anybody what they're in prison for is if I go to the parole board like I did with Dave, right? Um, like anybody else in the world, I've got my own beliefs that some people belong in prison for the rest of their life, and maybe some people deserve a second chance. And so, I've been to the parole board lots of times here in Salem. I'm a licensed drug and alcohol counselor as well as a person in recovery. And so, not that I carry any weight, but I think I represent pretty well. And the guys that are in there that are never getting out, we got guys that got 35 years clean. We've got John got 44 years clean. We've got guys that just got high the day before they came in. So, we got them from all ranges, you know what I mean? But we got 150 plus guys that are pounding on the doors for recovery in there, you know what I mean? And it's like everybody said, it's a movement, man. It's not just in there, it's out here. And I'm seeing, because I pick a lot of guys up, like me and Steve just drove a guy down to Medford the other day, 250 miles one way, got him to where he was paroling to a program down there in Medford, and then drove another 250 miles back home again. I drive guys to Portland, I drive them to Eugene, I drive them, here to Salem. We pick them up and we support them. We're at about 50, I would say about 50% of the people that attend the meetings inside of OSP and SANIAM and CRCI stay clean and stay in contact with us. You know what I mean? And 50% I think is a really good number. You know what I mean? And when I tell the guys that, they're like, "Oh, so like every other person in here is going to stay clean." And I'm like, no, fucking everybody in this room can stay clean. And then our numbers will be 75%. You know what I mean? It's not, you know what I mean? The numbers are skewed. You know what I mean? It's like, and we're seeing it, man. We're seeing the guys want it, you know? it's fucking incredible, man. I've been a member for 15 years of the Hole in the Wall group. Steve's been a member for over 20 years, as an outside support. You know what I mean? And on Tuesday afternoon at noon, Friday morning at 7 o'clock. I get up at 5:30 in the morning to go in there. And every other Saturday, man, I wouldn't do anything else on those fucking days. You know what I mean?
And I want to throw this in here. Some of the most amazing stuff that's happened to me since I've been gone. I was at the state fair a couple of years ago, and this lady, this guy, this girl was pushing a baby cart with two twins in it. Came up to me. I had no idea who he was, couldn't remember him. Thanked me for giving him a life because he was in the Hole in the Wall group, and this new wife just had twins, and he was trying to say it was my fault that he had a life. And I was telling him, you did the work, man. You showed up. You keep doing it, and you can keep this life. But there is nothing better to your heart when you're walking around somewhere and somebody comes up and does that to you.
Come on.
Yeah. And
Man.
we bring men. I mean, that it's an open meeting in Narcotics Anonymous. Men and women are welcome. My wife attends that meeting in there. She's 5 foot tall and 100 pounds, and she goes in there, and they love the shit out of her, man. And the car show every year, July 19th, they're having their 44th annual car show in there. It's incredible, man. I mean, the love and support that the people in that prison get from the outside community is incredible, and we do nothing but encourage them to stay clean. I mean, I've had 3 phone calls from guys up in Portland that want me to come up there and come to some meetings up there that just recently got out that are staying clean. It's a fucking movement, man. It really is, and it's a great one.
What's up, Chris?
Just want to pivot back for a second. You talked about OSP having multiple meetings a week, unlike any of the other prisons in Oregon. Why is the administration so supportive? Why has NA been so successful at the Oregon State Penitentiary?
Well, I think because it's listed as a club, so they have lifers clubs, they have the Hurasasa Club, they have the Asian Pacific Club. They have up on the activities floor, they have all these different clubs, and so they support us that way. And like pre-COVID, through the Hole in the Wall group, we've even started a CADC program where we're training guys in there to be licensed drug and alcohol counselors and become CADCRs, which is not quite a recovery drug and alcohol counselor. They're a trainee, but they'll have all their classroom time and some of their hours signed off on becoming a drug and alcohol counselor when they get out. And that's something that's run through the narcotics, through the Hole in the Wall Club up there in OSP. And we're changing lives up there, man. Right now we've got almost 20 guys that are attending classes up there that we're training them to be drug and alcohol counselors, and we're signing off on some of their hours. They'll probably get out with probably about 300-400 hours of 1,000 they need to be able to test out. You know what I mean? And that's what people want to do, man. People want to not go back to prison. You know what I mean? They're tired, like Eric. They go back, they get out, they go back, they go out, they go out, and come back, and then Eric goes in with 35 years. And usually that's a nail in the coffin. And so I think we're changing that, man, at least a little bit, anyways.
Yeah, that is so good to hear too. And I would imagine that the results are there too. Like there's a bunch of positive results that how could they not be supportive with stories like Eric's and Dave's and you guys, now I do want to tell you this. I'm also a licensed counselor. And one day I was meeting with a client who I was interviewing to come into my transitional program. And he had just done 25 years. And we were in the process. I was telling you about doing H&I at the Turney Center. Well, I was trying to get in there, and we had 27 people who signed up, filled out an application, and 3 people got approved. And then not only that, like the process was you had to show up 2 hours early, go through security, and then you just sat in. They had a LADAC, which is a licensed counselor that worked there. You had to sit in their office for 2 hours and hope that nothing popped off inside to cancel the H&I meeting. And a couple of times that happened, and you can't leave until everything's under control. So you hang out. So sometimes we'd go all the way over there, sit there for 2 hours, and they say, "Hey, we're not having a meeting tonight." Whatever. The process of getting in was so challenging. So as I'm interviewing this guy who just got out, I'm like, "What's another way that we can get in?" He said, "Well, I'll tell you where I was at. What they just started doing is all the inmates had tablets, and we had little electronic devices that we could watch books, or watch books, read books, listen to podcasts, or watch training videos or different things like that." And it was like, it clicked, listen to podcasts. And so that was the whole motivation behind putting this podcast together in the beginning, was because of how difficult it was in our area. We thought, well, let's put a podcast together. Well, actually, I thought that, and then Volin told my brother-in-law, who was in recovery, that he was going to help me. Uh, let's have it established so that we have something to present to those facilities to say, hey, we already have an active podcast that's going. It's Narcotics Anonymous related. I know we have such a hard time getting volunteers in here. Could it get it? Can you approve this to go onto their tablets? And so that's, with that being said, that was the motivation behind this, and it's still a work in progress trying to get that worked out so that people can listen. We got it approved at our local jail here where I'm from, so they're actually allowed to listen to it now. But I say all that to say this, and I guess it's a perfect way to wrap it up because I don't want to hold you guys here all night. You've already been so gracious. But if there is a way that someday people on the inside can listen to this, what would be your message to those individuals that maybe are incarcerated, or maybe it's like Dave's situation where there's no end in sight? What would be your message to go from that lifestyle of living and using while you're in there versus trying to apply this program of recovery?
So what I tell them guys in there probably every time, by the time I get done sharing at the end of my share, I finish it up with, my sponsor told me one day that if I just quit doing the one thing I love to do most, which was get high, that the day would come when there would be so many things that I love to do that there's not enough time in the day to do it. And that's what Narcotics Anonymous has given me. And so if you want to give this life, a chance, that's what you got to look forward to. I mean, we promised the freedom from active addiction. That's the only thing we promised, right? But with that comes so much fucking more, Stevie?
Well, for me, I was just thinking it's a hard one for me to answer because when I first got put in prison, I was using drugs. That's how I got put in a hole to have to go to get on lock to get up to the hole in the wall group. And, when I was using drugs in there, it was hiding and sneaking around the corner. And then when I got high, I was trying to, sit on my bunk because I was in a dorm. It was just really bad getting high in there. And when I did my 4 months in the hole, it gave me time to think about my life and what I've done because I was 41 years old at that point. And I had nothing, I had no life to look forward to. My family wouldn't let me come to the house. I had no friends because everybody I knew was getting high and the cops were so hot on me. No one wanted me at their house. I had a chance to change my life and I went to Narcotics Anonymous and took it. And I would never look back for anything else.
Oh yeah. Dave, you want to jump in?
Yeah. For me, it was just, I was done. I'm not going to say that I hit rock bottom. It was, I used here, I used there, but it was, I was done. And when I finally joined Narcotics Anonymous, you could say I kind of kicked myself in the butt because I didn't do it sooner. Um, I'm grateful for Eric and Ketty and Steve and everyone else in the Hole in the Wall group because, you know, they supported me in some of my highs of highs and lows of lows. But I get that out here too. You know, the unloaded group for Thursday night here in Coquille, you know, amazing people, you know. And what I've done with my life now is, you know, I'm a traveling millwright. I just went to Washington, first out of state trip. I got a real good support from my parole officer, my friends, family. You know, I wouldn't have that if I was still using drugs. I would not be doing this podcast with you guys if I was still using drugs. I'd be still sitting in prison. You know, I got lucky when I was inside. I got to be involved with some amazing groups and some amazing programs. And it wasn't just Narcotics Anonymous. I was fortunate. I was also fortunate that I didn't get caught doing the things that I was doing. But it all depends on when you're ready to make a change in your life. When you're ready to say, I need something different. You know, I seen Eric's transformation. I seen Eric every morning standing down there at the bottom of the stairs saying, welcome. You're always welcome. And the guys that were still walking out to the yard says, door's always open. You're always welcome here. And, you know, I ended up being that same person standing down there at the bottom of the stairs saying, hey guys, we got a meeting this morning. Come on up. You know, when it was their time, they showed up and they found recovery. You know, and for some, it's a struggle because they have a reservation about the program. And once they lose that reservation, life's a whole lot better.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave. Eric, did you want to jump in?
You know, I just got to say is that, you know, life is good thanks to Narcotics Anonymous and my higher power. And you know, it was good to review some of the stuff, you know, standing down at the bottom of the stairs every time we had a meeting in the mornings, hollering out NAAA as the guys were going out to yard line trying to last one them in with the promise of cinnamon rolls that are better than cinnamon. You know, people would come for the cinnamon rolls, but they caught the message while they're there, you know, and the way that my life and so many others' lives have changed because of Narcotics Anonymous is unbelievable. And I think Chris has got his hand up. He's been pretty patient.
Mason, just really appreciate you sharing the story that you did um, about the origins of the podcast and the gap that existed in your area and how you sought to carry the message. The only thing that I wanted to add is that for a lot of folks who are on the inside, they're forgotten about, they're given up on, and in some ways, like you guys are you described the inside GSR, the outside GSR carrying the inside GSR message. What is it that you think that folks on the inside would want NA members or society as a whole to know about the recovery revolution that's going on?
I would have to say that someone that's inside, you know, knowing that Nas is there for them. Like you said, some people don't have family support. Well, you know what? We love you until you can love yourself. We're there. I've sat there with people bawling my eyes out because something bad happened at at home. Things have happened with me, and I've shared in the meetings. You know, it, you're never alone. And with us in the hole in the wall group, we were a family when you didn't have a family to turn to. And some of the best people I've ever met, in society's eyes, they're rejects. But you know what? We stand on our own 2 feet and we stand united.
Katie?
Stevie B, hammer it.
Well, the thing is, I carry that message every other weekend when I come in there to let those people know that they're not forgotten from the Narcotics Anonymous groups from the outside. And, we go to conventions and I carry in what people say and how they feel and how they buy their stuff and support the group. Everybody needs to know they're loved. You know what I mean? And just because they're incarcerated and they can't go anywhere, people has not forgotten the hole in the wall group. And I try to bring that to their attention every time I go in there.
Yeah, we were just at a world convention in Washington, D.C. We rolled in with 200 hole in the wall shirts and had them all sold in an hour. We took, I think, over 500 of them to the Florida convention, and it sold all but about 50 of them in 2 hours. If people want to support this group, people love the message that we give out, you know what I mean?
And they love the art.
And they love the art, you know what I mean? But they love the group, and they love hearing how, the sales of these shirts is buying books, literature, coffee, cinnamon rolls, you know what I mean? Planting the seed. That's what we do, man. We're planting the fucking seed of Narcotics Anonymous. And like Steve said, people are coming up that we haven't seen in years and are still clean. And it's amazing. And then there's still the group of us we all stick together and talk to each other that are staying clean. You know what I mean? And it's incredible, bro. It's fucking I wouldn't do like I said, I wouldn't do anything else those 3 days a week that I do the hole in the wall group, man. I mean, I schedule my work schedule around being able to go. I juggle 2 jobs and I'm partially retired, and I pencil that shit in. Like, my boss wants me to work on a Tuesday. I'm like, nope. You want me to work on a Friday morning? Nope. I'll be in about 10, And that shit takes a priority, man, because there's something about that group that is just incredible, man.
Oh yeah, it is. I think the first time that I met Chris in person, I watched his presentation, and then we got to conversating, and he ended up sending me a newsletter, a copy of the newsletter from the whole, and I just thought it was the most badass, most Narcotics Anonymous thing that I'd ever seen in my life, and it was so cool, man. And I'm so excited that people all over the world are going to listen to this podcast and get some exposure. And yeah, I feel like most people are going to have that same reaction that Katie was just describing. They want to support this group because it is so cool. Francis and I just did a podcast on one of the IDTs, which is reimagining our service structure. And I think what you guys are on to, and even though it's been around since '88, you taught Katie even brought it up earlier. Like, one of the big struggles in the fellowship right now is trying to get support for H&I. But I think about that old saying, like, you feed a man a fish, he eats for a day. You teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. So maybe one of the ways that we reimagine our service structure is by, okay, bring in the H&I committee, but with the goal of starting the meeting inside of the facility so that it's self-supporting and it's self-sustaining. That way, if the committee gets burned out, they don't lose the opportunity to have NA inside of that facility. Just a thought that I had. And, someday I hope it happens, and, just to watch it grow from from what you guys have all participated in, and the member who you shared spent clean 44 years inside of that meeting. What a gift. What a blessing. What's up, Katie?
So that's how the Sandy Am meeting got started. Like it's kind of started out as an H&I thing, but H&I blew out on it, and the same thing with the OSCI up in Portland. It started out as an H&I and H&I blew out, and then we stepped up and stepped in and got with the prison and asked them if we could just continue the meeting, even though it wasn't an H&I, because we didn't want to go in there under a rule that, oh, we're representing H&I when we weren't. H&I is great, but the guys in the prisons, they want to share, man. They don't mind the panel thing, you know what I mean? But they want to share. They want to participate in the meeting. They want to they want to be
the secretary, be the treasurer, be the
be
secretary,
and be as normal as they can while in an institution.
Come on.
And have that taste of reality and freedom, you know what I mean? And that's what these registered meetings are giving these guys, is they're giving them a taste of freedom that, for an hour and a half a day, a couple days a week, they're able to actually, we're under surveillance most of the time is what we do in our readings. We don't put we're not under surveillance at any time because there's fucking cameras all over the place. But so we make sure everybody knows we're under surveillance at all times. If you got something to say that you don't want anybody to know about, you talk to somebody off to the side afterwards. Don't fucking share it at a meeting, But they want that sense of normalcy. You know what I mean? That guy that's been in 44 years clean, he comes there, he knows he's never going to get out. He just wants a taste of freedom and to be able to close his eyes and pretend like he's in a Narcotics Anonymous meeting out on the street somewhere. And that's what we bring to these guys, man. It's just fucking incredible, man. I put in a thing on the side the address that you want to write to, and then you're gonna post it as well. They love to send their newsletter out, man, and they love response. You can write a letter back into them. If you got a bit of a story to tell, they'll pick it and put it in the newsletter as well. They take outside, people's information and stories, and they'll print them as well. They love outside participation because, like I said, that gives them a sense of feeling the freedom while they're not free.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a perfect place to kind of wrap it up. I just can't thank you guys enough. This has been incredible. You guys are incredible. The work that you're doing, my God, the lives that have changed because of that. And I hope someday that, Hole in the Wall is the start of something that's, is commonplace around institutions, is that, not only can an H&I presentation come in, but you can establish your own autonomous group inside of that facility. And yeah, awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. We just got it started. We could talk for about 5 more hours, but
Not me. Have a good
All
night,
right, y'all.
We'll be back next week with another episode. See you then.
Thank you for joining us on our Living Clean podcast. This is another platform that we can share our message of recovery, which is any addict can stop using drugs, lose a desire to use, and find a new way to live. Join that no matter what club. You can contact us through text. The number is 931-306-9364.